There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize the harder they push, the more life pushes back. The tighter they hold, the more it slips away. It's as if existence itself resists control. And it does, because control is not creation. Control is fear wearing the mask of order. You were never meant to force life. You were meant to flow with it, to listen, to respond, to allow. But the modern world taught you to dominate, to chase, to grind, to hustle until your spirit cracked under the pressure of pretending to be invincible. And in that noise, you lost touch with the rhythm of your own becoming. Carl Jung warned about this. He said that when we lose connection with the unconscious, that deep living intelligence beneath thought, we become possessed by our own ego. We start believing that everything depends on us, that life must obey our plans, our timing, our demands. But life is older than your will. It doesn't respond to control. It responds to consciousness. You've been taught to fight for everything. But the truth is, what's meant for you doesn't require force. It requires frequency. When your energy aligns with what's true, what's real, what's authentic, things begin to move on their own. People appear, doors open, synchronicities unfold like invisible hands rearranging your reality. And you can feel it, that quiet power of alignment. It's not frantic. It's not desperate. It's steady, certain, grounded. It feels like gravity, effortless but undeniable. Forcing life is a symptom of distrust. It means you've forgotten that the same intelligence beating your heart is the same one turning galaxies. You think you have to fix, to push, to manipulate outcomes. But the universe doesn't need your panic. It needs your presence. Every time you force something, you're telling life you don't trust it. And every time you release, you're telling life, I remember who's really in charge. This is not passivity. This is power of another kind, the power that comes from surrender, from patience, from awareness. The kind of power that doesn't crumble under uncertainty, the kind that can sit in the unknown without rushing to fill it with false certainty. Because every time you force timing, you sabotage wisdom. Every time you rush what's unfolding, you miss what it's trying to teach you. Think about it. The strongest trees don't grow overnight. The sharpest swords aren't born. They are forged, layer by layer, through fire and pressure. The same is true for you. You are being shaped by forces you can't see, guided by a pattern you didn't design but were born to fulfill. You think delay means denial, but delay is often design. The space between what you want and when it arrives is where you're being prepared to hold it. The universe doesn't withhold, it calibrates. It waits until your vibration matches your vision, until what you desire won't destroy you, until you can carry your blessings without them turning into burdens. That's why some things fall apart before they fall together. That's why certain people leave before you rise. Because everything not aligned with your next level must collapse before that level arrives. Forcing life is how you end up holding onto what's already trying to leave. And nothing drains the soul faster than carrying what's already complete. So, pause, breathe, look at where you're trying too hard. Where are you gripping life by the throat? Where are you confusing persistence with attachment? Where are you building resistance against what's trying to move naturally? Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and peace is the belief that you must fight for everything. The mind loves control because it fears the unknown. But the soul loves flow because it is the unknown. Your soul doesn't live in fear of change. It breathes through it. The same force that moves the tides, the same silence that turns chaos into cosmos, that force is your nature. You've just forgotten how to hear it. When you stop forcing life, you begin to hear its whisper again. You begin to feel the subtle nudges, the intuitive signals, the quiet invitations that your logical mind has been drowning out. This is where flow begins, not in doing less, but in doing what's aligned, not in effortlessness, but in effort that feels alive. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. And that process requires letting go of control over how things should look, because the path of the authentic self doesn't move in straight lines. It spirals. It leads you back to lessons you thought you'd already mastered, deeper each time. Every delay, every detour, every heartbreak is not a punishment. It's refinement. The ego calls it chaos. The soul calls it choreography. Think of how the river moves never in a straight line, but always forward. When it meets a rock, it doesn't attack it. It flows around it. And in doing so, it shapes the rock itself over time. That's what trust feels like. It's knowing that what's in your way is also what's shaping your way. Forcing life is like damming the river. It might seem powerful for a moment, but eventually the pressure breaks you. And when it does, you realize the water was never your enemy. You were never meant to control the current. You were meant to learn how to move with it. The art of flow is not surrendering your strength, it's refining it. It's no longer wasting energy on resistance. It's channeling it into rhythm. It's becoming precise with your power instead of desperate with it. When you stop forcing, you start allowing. When you start allowing, you start aligning. And when you align, you move through life like wind through trees, powerful, invisible, unstoppable. Look at the most powerful people in history, the visionaries, the mystics, the creators. They didn't force their destiny. They responded to it. They didn't chase significance. They embodied it. Because the moment you stop trying to make something happen, you create the space for something far greater to move through you. This is what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you stop forcing, you stop fighting your own unconscious. You start collaborating with it. You begin to see that what you once called chaos was simply the unintegrated parts of your own psyche trying to find expression. Every delay, every detour, every heartbreak, every silence, all of it was your unconscious guiding you back toward wholeness. Life was never punishing you. It was teaching you patience. It was teaching you trust. It was teaching you timing. The caterpillar doesn't force its wings. The seed doesn't force its bloom. And you don't need to force your becoming. You are becoming every time you choose truth over illusion, presence over panic, faith over control. Because life isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Every resistance you feel is an invitation to let go. Every loss is a portal to a deeper level of power. Every ending is a disguised beginning waiting for your surrender. And when you finally stop forcing, something ancient wakes within you. You begin to trust that the path will appear when you're ready to walk it. You stop trying to open every door and start realizing the right ones open by themselves. That's when miracles start to look ordinary. That's when synchronicity becomes your language. That's when peace becomes your default state. You begin to live not from effort, but from essence, not from fear, but from flow. And everything, absolutely everything, begins to change. When you stop forcing life, you start seeing how much energy you've been wasting trying to control what was never yours to control. You start feeling the difference between effort and resistance. Effort moves you forward. Resistance keeps you trapped in the illusion of progress. And that's what most of the world is stuck in: movement without direction, noise without purpose, obsession without alignment. The modern mind is addicted to control because it equates stillness with death. We live in a culture that worships the hustle, where rest is seen as weakness, where silence is mistaken for absence, where patience feels like laziness. But all creation, all transformation, all awakening begins in stillness. The seed is silent before it breaks the ground. The sky is silent before the storm. And your soul, your true, unconditioned self, can only be heard when everything else falls quiet. Jung understood this. He said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And cons it. That's why so many people force life. They can't bear the silence of alignment. They fill their days with noise, because silence threatens the illusion of control. But silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's the point where you finally stop reacting to life and start listening to it. And when you start listening, you notice that life has always been speaking. Through timing, through intuition, through the subtle patterns that repeat until you learn their lesson. When something doesn't work, no matter how hard you try, it's not punishment, it's redirection. When something keeps falling apart, it's not failure, it's revelation. It's life whispering, not this way. But your ego doesn't want to hear that. The ego thrives on control. It needs to believe it's in charge. It will build castles out of illusions, cling to situations that drain it, chase validation that costs its soul, just to avoid the truth that it's not the architect, it's the student. The deeper part of you, the eternal, aware, unchanging self, doesn't force. It observes, it flows, it moves with precision because it trusts timing. That part of you already knows what's meant to unfold. It doesn't need certainty. It is certainty. The more you align with that self, the less you need to control anything. You stop arguing with what is. You stop trying to make people see your worth. You stop fighting reality. And suddenly, peace doesn't feel like something to reach for. It feels like something you are. But this peace is not the peace of apathy. It's the peace of power. It's the stillness of someone who knows the difference between reaction and response, between surrender and submission, between flowing and fleeing. Because surrender is not giving up, it's waking up. It's no longer resisting what's already true. It's saying, I trust that what leaves is not mine, and what's mine can't miss me. That's the moment everything begins to reorganize. When you stop trying to micromanage life, life starts collaborating with you. You stop swimming against the current and realize the river was always carrying you toward where you were meant to go. You begin to move with grace. You begin to speak with conviction. You begin to act with ease. Because now you're not acting from fear, you're acting through awareness. That's the difference between the person who forces and the person who flows. The one who forces moves from desperation. The one who flows moves from direction. And direction doesn't come from thinking, it comes from alignment. To align, you must first declutter. Not just your space, but your mind, your habits, your relationships. Everything that demands constant control is costing you your peace. Ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer holds me? What battles am I fighting that no longer need to be fought? What old versions of me am I trying to keep alive just to prove I was right? Let them go. You don't owe your past self consistency. You owe your future self evolution. And evolution doesn't happen in control, it happens in collapse. The old identity must break for the real one to emerge. That's why everything falls apart before it comes together. Because your ego clings to what's familiar, even if it's killing you. And your soul keeps pulling you toward what's true, even if it scares you. The moment you stop forcing, you make space for transformation. And transformation doesn't come gently. It will strip you of everything you thought you were until all that's left is what you actually are. Raw, present, aware. It's terrifying, but it's the only way to live freely. Because freedom is not the ability to do anything you want, it's the ability to not be controlled by what you don't. It's the power to move when guided and wait when called to stillness. It's the realization that the universe doesn't work on demand, it works on resonance. So stop forcing the door to open. Raise your vibration until the right door recognizes you. Stop chasing what's leaving. Trust that what's meant for you can't be lost, it's coded into your timeline. Stop trying to control people's perceptions. Your truth doesn't need agreement to be real. This is where maturity begins, when you stop trying to prove your worth and start preserving your peace. When you stop forcing outcomes and start mastering your inner state, because the outer world is always a reflection of the inner. And the moment your inner world becomes still, life begins to mirror that stillness back. You start to see patterns that once ruled you fade away. The chaos you used to attract dissolves. The people who once drained you quietly disappear, not because you fought them, but because you no longer resonate with their frequency. You stop begging life to change, because you realize life was waiting for you to change. And from that point on, everything, everything moves differently. The timing of things begins to feel divine. The coincidences start aligning like constellations. What once felt forced now unfolds effortlessly, not because the world became easier, but because you stopped resisting its wisdom. You finally understand that the art of living isn't about controlling the rhythm, it's about dancing with it. It's about hearing the music behind the noise, seeing the order inside the chaos, trusting that the path knows the way even when you don't. That is when life opens. That is when everything changes. And when it opens, it doesn't arrive with fireworks or thunder. It arrives like a breath, quiet, certain, undeniable. It's the moment you stop waiting for signs because you've become one. The moment you stop seeking purpose because you're already living it. The moment you realize that life was never testing you, it was tuning you. You can feel it, can't you? That strange lightness when you finally stop chasing what was never running. That peace that feels undeserved only because you've forgotten how natural it is. You've spent years mistaking tension for effort, struggle for strength, chaos for growth. Now you see clearly. The storm was never against you, it was cleansing you. Everything that broke you was polishing you. Everything that left you was freeing you. Everything that delayed you was protecting you. You were never behind. You were being built. And when that truth sinks in, a different kind of confidence is born. Not the shallow confidence of appearance or achievement, the deep one that lives in your bones. The one that doesn't need to prove or persuade, because it knows. It knows that the timing of your life is sacred. It knows that what's meant for you is already magnetized to your name. It knows that there is no competition in authenticity, no rush in alignment, no lack in wholeness. You've outgrown the frequency of forcing. You're operating on the wavelength of becoming. This is the state that mystics called grace. It's not passive. It's power without tension. It's the kind of strength that moves mountains without strain, because it doesn't fight the current, it becomes it. Jung said that what you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. So you stop resisting even resistance. You learn to hold discomfort without flinching, uncertainty without panic, silence without fear. And that changes everything, because the moment you stop reacting, life stops needing to repeat the lesson. You've graduated from survival to creation, from control to cooperation, from panic to peace. And that's where life starts meeting you halfway. It starts bending in your direction. It starts revealing opportunities that were invisible when you were vibrating with tension. You begin to attract not by chasing, but by becoming. Because manifestation is not about getting what you want, it's about aligning with what you are. That's the secret the ego could never understand. The ego forces because it doubts. The soul allows because it remembers. You've spent enough of your life in the grip of fear, trying to outthink fate. Now you walk with it. You stop trying to force people to love you, and instead you love in silence and let love return in its own timing. You stop trying to prove your worth through achievement, and instead you create, because creation is joy. You stop trying to control how you're seen, and instead you focus on how deeply you see. This is mastery not of the world, but of the self, because the outer world follows the inner one like a shadow follows light. When you find peace, the world reflects it. When you stop forcing, life starts flowing. You realize you were never meant to hold the river, you were meant to become water. And water never forces, it adapts. It moves through stone, not with violence, but with patience. It carves entire canyons just by surrendering to its own nature. That's you now, quietly unstoppable. And as you move through life like this, calm, deliberate, awake, you start to see the pattern in everything. You see how every closed door redirected you to a better one. You see how every ending created the space for something higher. You see that life was never against you. It was always answering the vibration you gave it. And now, because you've changed your energy, life has no choice but to change its reflection. So you start living as if everything is happening for you, not to you, because it is. Even the setbacks are sculptors. Even the silence is guidance. Even the losses are protection. The only thing you ever had to do was stop fighting the current, stop forcing the lesson, stop demanding that the world makes sense before you learned how to see. And then something shifts. You begin to feel gratitude even before outcomes. You begin to trust the process, even when it's unclear. You begin to live as if peace was your birthright, because it is. That's what freedom feels like. To want nothing, to need nothing, to simply be, and know that being is enough. And as you move through your days with this awareness, people start to notice. They won't understand what changed, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the calm in your presence, the depth in your silence, the quiet authority in your eyes. You'll no longer have to explain your peace, you'll embody it. That's when life bends completely. Because the moment you stop forcing it, it stops resisting you. You've become one with the rhythm again. And that rhythm carries you exactly where you're meant to go. You finally understand what all the mystics, the philosophers, the poets were trying to say. That life was never about controlling outcomes. It was about remembering who you are within them. That surrender is not defeat. It's the highest form of participation. That letting go is not loss. It's liberation. You've come home to yourself. The chase is over. The noise is over. The war is over. Now, there's just stillness. Stillness that moves mountains. Stillness that heals. Stillness that creates. Because when you stop forcing life, you don't lose control. You gain harmony. And harmony is the sound of a soul that finally trusts its own timing. And so, at last, you stop fighting the river. You stand in the middle of it, feeling the current against your skin, and realize this was never something to control. It was something to trust. It was never a test of strength. It was a test of faith. All those years you spent chasing, striving, forcing life to obey you. You thought you were shaping destiny, but destiny was shaping you. It wasn't trying to break you. It was trying to open you, to stretch you until your will and its will became the same. Now you see how perfectly it all fits. The waiting, the losses, the detours that led you exactly where logic said you shouldn't be. Every single one of them was a piece of choreography written by something greater than ambition. You breathe deeper. The world doesn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It feels like an ocean that carries you wherever you're ready to go. You stop trying to swim faster. You start floating, not because you've given up, but because you finally understand that the water has always known the way. This is what it means to trust, not blind optimism, not passive acceptance, but the quiet certainty that everything unfolds as it must, and that whatever leaves was never meant to stay. You start moving through life differently now, slower, calmer, wiser. You no longer beg for signs you are one. You no longer chase peace. You embody it. You no longer force the future. You become it. Because When you stop forcing life, life stops being a struggle and becomes a conversation. It speaks, you listen. It moves, you follow, and somewhere in that rhythm, you realize the truth that was waiting for you all along. You were never separate from life. You were never outside the flow. You are the flow. The current you feared is the current you've become. And now, without resistance, without demand, without fear, you finally move, free, present, complete.